Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Jenne, and I'm a full professor of international relations at Central European University in Vienna, Austria. For many, many years, I have been teaching and conducting research on the topics of nationalism, ethnic conflict, minority relations, and methods of soft power conflict management. And this is the subject of two Cornell University Press books. More recently, I've turned to studying the role of nationalism and populism as distinct discourses in foreign policy making. And my area of research is broadly European politics. First thing, I think it's important to know that social sciences are intrinsically interdisciplinary and multi-method. So all of our research already is kind of multi-method. Not only does this imply a variety of epistemological and ontological approaches, but it also calls for a range of different methods. Contemporary research increasingly blends two or more distinct social science methodologies, widely known as multiple method research. And the value of drawing on more than one approach is that many big research questions can only be answered by examining processes that take place across multiple temporal and spatial domains. And sometimes it's going on at different levels of analysis. To assess the nature and scope of these processes, today's researchers increasingly draw on more than one method to shed light on multiple facets of such political problems in hopes of achieving greater explanatory leverage as well as descriptively rich empirical results. So there are multiple advantages, and again, why you might in particular want to use multi-method approach in your research. The first reason is that you might want to triangulate your findings. So let's say you have an empirical puzzle. Let's say you want to ask, why did the country of Estonia restrict citizenship to Russian minority members after the collapse of the Soviet Union, whereas Lithuania did not? This is an empirical puzzle. To answer this question, you might want to conduct a cross-national representative study showing that anti-Russian attitudes are much higher in Estonia than Lithuania. And you conclude that this drives popular support for restrictive naturalization policies, and hence you might conclude that public preferences drive the policy making. But how can you be sure about this? To check if this is what happened, you might follow this up with a quantitative textual analysis of parliamentary debates over citizenship policies in Estonia. So now you have what's classically known as a quant-quant design. That is quantitative and quantitative, two different quantitative methods that are combined in one project. Another reason is that you might want to extend or complement your research findings in the first study. So let's say you want to know why there is more anti-Russian sentiment in Estonia than in Lithuania, and you hypothesize that Estonians are more anti-Russian because they share a border with Russia. To test for this, you might conduct another survey or focus group discussing Russia and ethnic Russians in their home country. Focus groups can be conducted in locations close to the border and away from the border, showing that people who have more anti-Russian sentiments are fixated on the proximity of Russia to Estonia. In this case, focus group data are used to investigate the drivers of anti-Russian sentiment. So this is a quant-qual, that is quantitative and qualitative method combined in one single design. A third possible reason is you might want to investigate the causal mechanism. So this is a very common reason people use multi-methods. And this is what is known as a factor or factors that drive the outcomes. In this case, it's anti-Russian sentiments and restrictions on minority naturalization. To investigate whether it was anti-Russian preferences that drove naturalization restrictions rather than vice versa or some omitted third variable, the researcher could supplement the study with an in-depth semi-structured interviewing with policymakers who were involved in naturalization laws in both countries. And then you could use process tracing of policy choices to see if the restrictions were actually driven by anti-Russian preferences. And this is a quant-qual design. And finally, you might want to generalize your findings. So let's say you start with a semi-structured interviewing of policymakers in Estonia, and you find that the politicians enacted a restricted naturalization law in the 1990s because they felt that politicians or their constituents demanded it. You might then want to follow this up using a large N analysis of attitudes, maybe an off-the-shelf data set, towards Russian speakers across the newly independent Soviet states and look to see if people with anti-Russian sentiment vote for parties that enact more restrictive naturalization policies. And this is a qual-quant design. What I teach in my course. So first of all, we begin by covering the logic, the advantages, and the unique challenges associated with multi-method research in social sciences. We first enumerate the many uses and attractiveness of the MMR, we call multi-method approach, and identify questions that are particularly well suited for MMR. We also explore the limitations and challenges that students and early career researchers are likely to face in applying MMR to their research projects, as well as a range of options that are available to you in desiring to undertake this type of approach. We explore the unique challenges related to concept formation and theory development when you're combining different methods. And we also tackle the unique challenges of hypothesis testing and data requirements that are associated with different types of MMR, including joining positivist and interpretivist parts of a project. And then we explore all of these difficulties, challenges, and tips to how to handle them using actual examples in the field. So using a range of different topics and subfields. So in looking at the different choices that you have, the templates that are available, we begin with a traditional positivist multi-method research design that blends mainstream positivist research projects. So positivist with another positivist approach. This usually combines regression analysis using large N data analysis with a small n, let's say paired case study, or maybe even a qualitative comparative analysis of multiple cases. And then we can also additionally use historical process tracing in one or two cases across space or time. A third technique combines micro-level experimental or other survey research that is undertaken at the individual level with macro-level analysis undertaken at higher levels of analysis, such as cross-temporal or sectional analysis of states, institutions, groups, or let's say international organizations. A fourth type of MMR crosses epistemological lines, combining positivist and non-positivist techniques in an approach known as analytical eclecticism. While less mainstream than positivist hybrids, this combination of methods of interpretivist and positivist research design principles has gained momentum across a number of social science fields. In addition, the course will familiarize us with the uses of computer-aided qualitative data analysis, specifically in Viva, which I've used in my work, and show you how it can be used to assist you in the analysis of qualitative field data, together with practical tips about how to conduct qualitative field work, how to conduct and how to design and conduct the interview protocol. And then we finally finish the course with a write-up, namely, how do we derive empirical generalizations across different analyses, and how do we integrate these findings in a single engagingly written research report? And I think what is a special benefit of the course is that students have the option to apply these principles to their own research projects in the development of their project, no matter if it's the beginning of the project or quite advanced, so that I give individualized feedback on how to push the research design further and how to handle various barriers that you're dealing with in combining these different methods in a single research project. What is going to be a core component of the course is thinking about how to develop these projects from beginning to end. So first we begin with a justification why we want to actually use multiple approaches in a single project. So as we've discussed before, one reason might be triangulation, checking for robustness in one study to another. Causal identification, so testing for a causal mechanism. You might also have multiple research questions, so you might want to extend your research in another temporal or spatial or even topical domain. And finally, test of generalization. So how and to what extent do your qualitative findings in one case generalize to a wider set of cases? You also want to ask yourself, secondly, what is your dominant approach? Are you mostly a qualitative researcher or are you mostly quantitative researcher? What's the dominant mode of analysis? And in that sense, you also want to address branding issues. What kind of researcher are you? How do you want to present yourself to the research community? Third, what is the interface between the employed methods? Are you using a mosaic of different methods used in coding, collection, and analysis of data? Or is it kind of a hinge that you want to basically do one study and then proceed to do the next study? So how exactly, in other words, are you combining methods and different types of data in a single project? And then finally, in your research design, you might want to ask yourself, how are you actually going to present this information and analysis to your readers? Are you going to begin with a large N study and move to the small N study? Or are you starting with, let's say, a comparative case study of two countries, wars, social movements, interventions, or regimes? And then after that, you supplement it with a large N study of all countries. So this is then the questions that you need to address in the research design. And this is the kind of feedback that I'll be giving you about how you're applying these general techniques to your own project.